Hey everybody. So it appears that the Philadelphia Flyers have a new general manager. There's been no official statement put out yet by the Flyers. I haven't seen anything official saying that they have a new general manager, but all the sources are saying that Chuck Fletcher will be hired as Philly's new GM. It's only a matter of time. As of right now, it's been all over Twitter. Everyone's saying it, but there just hasn't been any official confirmation from the team. But that usually takes longer, and the insiders usually know what's happening before anything official gets put out. Obviously the statement has to be typed up and made sure everything, all the paperwork's done, everything's in place. So, assuming that everyone is right and Chuck Fletcher will be named the Philadelphia Flyers GM, let's talk about that a little bit. Chuck Fletcher was Minnesota's general manager for a number of years and then was fired at the end of last season after Minnesota lost in the first round to Winnipeg. Fletcher basically built the current Minnesota Wild team, at least the core of that group and most of that group, with the exception of their offseason moves this past offseason, were Chuck Fletcher. And Minnesota is a good team. They're a very, very solid good team. However, while they were consistently in the playoffs and at some seasons a 100-point team, they can never get past the first round. They've never really gone deep into the playoffs. And that's why Chuck Fletcher was let go, because he built a very good team in Minnesota. He built a playoff team in Minnesota, but he didn't build a contending team in Minnesota. The Wild were never a team that could go deep into the playoffs, that could contend for a Stanley Cup. They make the playoffs almost every year, but then they lose in the first round. So now you have Philadelphia, who is a team that lately has been on and off with being a playoff team. They make it one year, they don't the next. They make it one year, they don't the next. So you have a team that is somewhat consistently in the playoffs, somewhat not. They're kind of hit or miss as far as the playoffs go. They're not consistently out, but they're not consistently in either. And you have it much like the Wild. They're another team that they're a good team usually, not this season, but usually they're a good team. They have talented players, but when they do make the playoffs, they're always out in the first round, much like the Wild have been over the past number of seasons. So I'm wondering where the upgrade really is. Because, with Fletcher, he built a team in Minnesota that consistently made the playoffs, but consistently lost in the first round. In Philadelphia, you have a team that maybe, isn't in the playoffs as consistently. I guess there's room for improvement there, where maybe Philly could not miss the playoffs for a number of seasons, which, like I said, it's been on again, off again the last few years. But again, when they do make the playoffs, consistently out in the first round. Chuck Fletcher he didn't build Minnesota into a contending team. How's he going to build the Flyers into a contending team? Obviously, it's different players, a whole new situation, whole new people around him, whole new conference. You can't just blanket statement say that because Minnesota consistently was out in the first round means that he's only going to build a team in Philadelphia that's consistently out in the first round. There's a lot of variables that go into it. However, it's a little bit interesting to me that they hire a guy who basically isn't that much better than the last guy that they had. Ron Hextall had a team that made the playoffs a lot and then lost in the first round. Chuck Fletcher had a team in Minnesota that made the playoffs a lot but lost in the first round. So I'm a little unsure of where the upgrade is there. However, one of the big differences is Chuck Fletcher is a guy who is not afraid to make moves. Chuck Fletcher will trade players. Chuck Fletcher will make coaching changes. Hextall Hextall wasn't a big mover. I mean, you look at their core roster over the past few seasons, it stayed relatively the same. Over the past 5 years, there haven't been that many major changes. Young players have come up, but he hasn't been making blockbuster trades. He hasn't been adding at the deadline very often to the team. He makes a few off-season moves here or there, but Ron Hextall was not a big mover. He was very much a build-from-within type of GM. Chuck Fletcher is very willing to make moves. He will make trades. He will fire the coach. He will change things up. And I think that's really what drew Philly to him. Is he was successful in Minnesota. He built a good team with a very strong core and a team that's consistently in the playoffs. Philadelphia wants to be consistently in the playoffs. So that's a good sign and something that Philly really liked in Fletcher. I also think they liked the fact that he was willing to make moves. Because I think once he takes over in Philly and takes the reins, he has decisions to make. He has moves to make. He has a coaching decision to make on whether he's going to keep Dave Haxtell or bring his own guy in. He has roster decisions to make with guys like Jake Voracek and Wayne Simmons, potentially others as well. There's potential for a fire sale, just tons and tons of roster changes in Philly. Trades could be, there's a lot of potential there for a lot of different moves to be made. There's also the coaching decision. I mean, he's got the chance. When he takes over in Philly, there's the chance for some major moves. Now another question is going to be, is Philly trying to save their season this year, or are they going to already start building for next season? Are they going to try and pull out of being a nearly last place team like they are and try and come back this season, go on a long win streak and get back into the playoff hunt and really end up making the playoffs this season? Or are they going to say, all right, we've dug a deep hole this year, we're probably all done, we're probably not going to surpass the number of teams that we need to surpass to make it into the playoffs, so let's focus on putting a winning team on the ice next season? What their philosophy is going forward is going to have a huge effect on what Chuck Fletcher does when he becomes GM. If they're trying to save their season this year and immediately have an impact, he's going to have to make moves right away. If they're looking forward to next year, he has a little bit more time to settle in, see how things are, see what moves need to be made, and then make the necessary decisions. Given the way Paul Holmgren just canned Hextall, I wouldn't be surprised if Philly's still trying to save their season this year. As hopeless as it might seem, and as in bad of shape in the standings as they are right now, I would not be surprised if Holmgren is going into this with the idea that Philly could still be a playoff team this year and they're going to try and save their season. I don't know that for a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. If that is the case, we're going to see moves right away from Fletcher because he doesn't have time to wait around. We're almost a third of the way done with this season. He doesn't have time to wait around and feel things out. He's got to make major changes, and the Flyers need to start winning games right now if they're going to save this year. So there's a lot of decisions to be made in Philadelphia, but they've made the big one in hiring Chuck Fletcher. He is their GM going forward. We'll see what kind of moves he makes. I expect a number of changes to take place as soon as he's officially hired and takes the reins. I expect Philly to be active on the trade market. I expect a decision on Haxtell very, very soon. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be real interesting to see what Philly does with Chuck Fletcher. But again, I think he's a decent hire. He built a good team in Minnesota. However, I don't know what his ceiling is as far as how good of a team he can build. He's built a playoff team, but he has not built a cup contending team. So we'll see what he does in Philadelphia. But right now it appears, even though I have not yet heard any official word from the Flyers, all the sources are saying that Chuck Fletcher will be named the Philadelphia Flyers GM. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media, check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support Off the Wall Hockey, the link to our Patreon as well as the link to our merchandise store are down in the description. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.